Hello everyone, how are you doing? I hope you're well. Welcome back to my channel and to another video. And in today's video, we are talking about something that I love quite a lot, if you couldn't tell from the background, which is books. So without further ado, let's get on to it, shall we? Okay, so like I just said, I love books, I always have. I love the escapism of books and getting lost in a story and in getting invested in the character's life and feeling like you're part of their story. And yeah, I just have always loved reading, and in more recent years I haven't read as much as I had usually done in the past, and I don't know, that just isn't me. So I thought what I would do was try and read more, and that was my goal for 2020, but in true 2020 fashion, that didn't happen. So in 2021 I came into it thinking this is the year that I'm going to try and read more and make up for all of the times that I didn't read as much as I usually would in a year. And I thought I would document it with you guys on my channel and talk about the books that I read each month. And I thought it would be a nice way for us to talk about something that maybe we both like. So for instance, if I talk about a book that I really enjoy across the months, maybe it'll be something that takes your interest and makes you think, oh, maybe I'll buy that book. And same goes for me as well. If a book that you mention or recommend to me comes up somewhere in the comments, or you message me and be like, hey, you should try this book if you like this book, maybe I'll end up finding a new book that I really love as well. So yeah, I thought that would be something quite nice for me to do on my channel. But yeah, every month I'm going to try and talk about the books that I read in that previous month. And I didn't want to give myself a huge target of how many books I wanted to read across the year. I thought if I read at least a book a month, so that would mean 12 books across the whole year, that would be a pretty good number. But again, that is a loose number, so if it was more than that, it doesn't matter. If it's less than that and I don't get to meet that target, that's okay as well. But I'm already doing okay. In the month of January, I read 6 books. So I'm on track already, I'm halfway there. Technically, that means I don't have to read any more books until at least June, right? Obviously, that isn't gonna happen. I'm gonna read more this month now and in the coming months. So yeah, I thought I would start off with the books I read in January, as you're supposed to do, because that's how months work. But anyway, like I said, I read 6 books in January. So let's talk about them, shall we? So the first book that I'm going to talk about is this book. This book is called Words in Deep Blue by the author Kath Crowley. It's quite a small book, which I thought would be quite good to start me off into the year and back into reading again, because there's not too much, it's not going to be too deep. Pun not intended, a book to have to get my head into. And basically it's about 2 people, told from the perspectives of two people. One is called Henry, one is called Rachel. Henry lives and works in a bookstore, a secondhand bookstore, with his family, and in that bookstore there is something called the letter library, which basically is a section of the library where it has hundreds of books, and people can write notes in the books, make marks of parts that they really like about the book, you know, highlight things, circle things, underline things, whatever they like. And they can even, if they want to, write a letter to somebody, put it in a specific section or a specific chapter or a page of a book, and tell that person, hey, I wrote you a letter, go to this bookstore and read the letter that I wrote you and reply to it. So just to premise part of the story to do with the other character, which is Rachel. That's why I mentioned that specific part of the bookstore. Rachel used to live in the same place that Henry did. They'd been best friends for their whole life. And she moved away 2 years prior to the setting of the book. So something happened while she was away that meant that she had to come back to where she used to live, where Henry lives, and she has to sort of face up to those demons and all the things that she used to go through when she was growing up there, and the relationship that she has with Henry, who, like I said, they were best friends. However, before she went away 2 years prior, she wrote a letter to him and left it in the letter library to tell him that she loved him, and she always had, and to meet her on the last day that she was going to be in this place. And he never did write back to her or meet her, so she thought he rejected her. In actual fact, he didn't even realise that she'd written this letter. And yeah, lots of things, lots of twists and turns happen in the story, and it's also got other things intertwined as well, other storylines. So for instance, we see other parts of the letter library in this book, like in between the different chapters of Henry's perspective and Rachel's perspective, which is quite fun. So we get to see what kind of things people have written in the letter library. There's also a lot of big plot twists that happen that are to do with other characters, like I mentioned. So Henry's sister, there's some things to do with that and his parents. and Rachel's family as well, and their friends, and different things from their past and present that affect them in this book, which I found quite nice. I like that it was set mostly in a library, and I like that it was about love and loss, friendship, lust, and different relationships that develop over time and how important they are to you at certain points in your life, and you know, you coming to terms with those parts of your life. I liked it. Like I said, quite a small book, quite a good size to get myself back into reading again. So that was Words in Deep Blue. So the next book that I read isn't actually a non-fiction book, it's a fiction book, which I don't usually read. Actually, it's not even a fiction book, it's an autobiography. I don't really read that many autobiographies. I have a few behind me here, but this one is an exception because it involves two of my favourite TV personalities, TV presenters ever in the whole entire world, which is Ant and Dec. So this is called Once Upon a Time, and it is about their 30-year career together as a presenting duo. So if you're not from the UK, they present a lot of big TV shows across the year for a TV channel in the UK, and everybody loves them. They're very, very, very popular. And yeah, I love them. They're like my favourite people. Because I grew up watching them, they just feel very comforting to me. I love their style of comedy and the way that they are as, you know, the dynamic that they have between them as friends and as TV presenters. And this book is kind of like reading a script of their TV show. So if you've ever watched anything that they've presented, they have kind of like a back and forth narrative where one of them says something, the other one says something back, or like they make a joke of each other in a lot of what they're saying. This is kind of like that in the way that one person says something, the other replies to it to carry on the story and what happened in their lives. So yeah, this is good in a way that it gives you a different perspective of the way that we've watched them grow up over the years, presenting over the last 30 years of their lives. So from the start and what happened at the start for them to become good friends and decide to present together, and all the shows that they did, some successful, some not successful, that were a catalyst to their career now. And yeah, it's really fun. And they also have other people's perspectives in here too, which is really interesting. They have people that they've worked with in the past or in the present, interjecting every now and again, adding sections to the chapters. So that is the second book that I read in January of 2021. So let's move on to the next. Actually, saying that, I don't actually have the next book that I started, but I do have the book that I was sort of reading at the same time. Both of them were given to me by my mum. She already read them beforehand, so she sometimes gives me books that she thinks I might like. So I started one book and then this one intertwined, and I read this one, well, finished it before I finished the other book, if that makes sense. So this book is called The Little Dreams of Lara Cliff. It's by Millie Johnson. She writes a lot of female sort of chick flicky, what's it called? Chick lit? Is that what it's called? For like women and like love stories and all of those kind of things. And my mum has read quite a lot of her things. This is actually like a novella, so it's very small, not that thick of a story. I think actually the actual story wraps up on page 99 of the book or something like that. So yeah, it's quite a good book to introduce you to this person's style of writing and the way that they tell stories and the characters that they have in their books. And this one in particular is about a girl called Lara. It's in a third person perspective, and it involves 4 friends who are going on a hen do before Lara gets married to her fiance, and they're going to Amsterdam. So the first part of the book is them sort of travelling to Amsterdam on the ferry overnight, and then a couple of the chapters of them actually in Amsterdam, and then the rest of it's them travelling home from Amsterdam, and then the end is the outcome of that trip. So the main talking point in this though is Lara having to come to terms with things that happened in her past that involved her ex-fiance, who actually ends up being on the ferry that they take over to Amsterdam, and she kind of comes to terms with the fact that she's seeing him again, and he broke off their engagement 3 weeks before their wedding, and they were together for a really long time, and she sort of buried those feelings and never really got over it fully until she met her new fiance. Her friends are helping her through that, and yeah, it's her eventually realising that she needs to put herself and her own dreams and ambitions and things in life first, and not just going along with what her partner or her friends or whoever want her to do. She should find a partner and go through life with somebody that's willing to share that with you. And yeah, it's a nice book about friendship and all those kind of things. Yeah, I don't know if I'd read something of hers again, but it was nice to have just a small book to read just to pass the time. And yeah, I don't know if I would recommend it. If you're just looking for something really quick to read for like a day, maybe that's this, but I didn't particularly enjoy it or the story, but my mum likes this kind of thing, so good for her, but not for me. So the other book that I read, that I started before the other book that I just showed you, is 20s Girl by Sophie Kinsella. I've not actually read anything of hers before. My mum reads a lot of those kind of books, like I said, and she had this book and she's like, hey, you will probably really like this book. That was about 2 or 3 years ago now, and I still hadn't read it up until this year, and I had it on my bookshelf behind me and I was just like, okay, I'll finally read this book and see what it's about and see if I like it. And yeah, basically it is another girl called Lara. Funny how that worked out. And she is at a funeral for her great aunt Sadie, who died when she was 105, and it's a very small funeral. Not many people turn up because not many people cared about her being that old, and they didn't really connect with her as much in her later years. And yeah, at the funeral she hears somebody saying, oh, where's my necklace? I need my necklace. And she's looking around like nobody else can hear what is happening, so she's a little bit freaked out by that. So she goes to sit away from the main congregation, I guess, even though it's only like 6 other people at the funeral with her. And she sits in another part of the church, and she ends up seeing this person who's yelling about her necklace, but again, nobody can see or hear her. And it turns out that it's a ghost, but it's not just any ghost, it's the ghost of her great aunt Sadie, but not in her obviously 105-year-old form. It's the form, I guess, that she felt most herself in and the most comfortable, which is when she's 23, I believe, in the 20s. She's the only one that can see Sadie, and she uses that to her advantage, where obviously Sadie's like yelling at her like, oh my god, you need to do this now, you're the only one that can see me, and she's trying to get her to do things for her as well in her life. But Lara uses her to her advantage to help her get ahead with her career. She gets Sadie to help her with things, as well as things to do with her relationships. So there's a guy that she was with for a long time, but they broke up, so she was trying to get Sadie to help her get back together with him. Yeah, so it's basically about that to start off with, but lots of other things happen in the process of this book that give it a lot of twists and turns. It's not just about, you know, a ghost and her last dying wishes before she goes off to wherever ghosts go, which is obviously to find her necklace. There's a lot of very dark family secrets that get unveiled, and it's so interesting. I love seeing their dynamic as the book goes along and the friendship that they make as a great auntie and a niece sort of relationship. It's nice as well because it kind of reminds you that obviously when you're growing up and your grandparents or your great auntie or uncle or whoever are quite old, when you know them, you only know that version of them. You never know the version of them when they were really young. So it's nice to see Lara learning about her as she was younger and growing up, and the things that went on in her life that made her who she was, and not just the version that she knew of her in the care home when she was in her hundreds. So it's really nice to see that aspect of the book as well. And like I said, lots of dark twists and turns to do with family, and we learn that Sadie maybe isn't who we think she is. Lots and lots of really exciting things. This book kept me up until 3 AM at one point because it was that good. And yeah, I really love this book, so thank you, Mum, for recommending it to me like 2 years ago, because I really did enjoy it like you said I would. So that was 20s Girl. And the next book that I read after that, which actually was another ghost story, which I sort of didn't realise until I started reading it, and then I was like, oh wait, yeah, this is another book about ghosts, and that is When the Curtain Falls by Carrie Hope Fletcher. She's written quite a lot of books that I've read. I've read 3 of her books already, and I really like her style of writing. I love that it always has a magic or mystery element to it. This one in particular is set in a theatre, which I really like because she's not done that before, and that's her career as well. Carrie is a wonderful musical theatre actress, so I like that she's written her world that she's used to and the career that she has in real life into the book, which I think is a really cool different perspective of the theatre world. Obviously, as an audience member, you just see what you see on stage, you don't see what happens backstage, so this is quite nice to see that sort of aspect of the theatre world and the things that go on. But this one in particular, obviously, like I said, is a ghost story, so it's about the ghosts of the theatre world, because obviously every theatre at some point has a ghost. And this one in particular is of a ghost called Fawn, who was in the original production of When the Curtain Falls. The version that we know at the start of the book is the version with a girl called Olive and a guy called Oscar, who are putting it on in the same theatre that it was originally on, and they kind of have a sort of will they won't they relationship going on, and it's about their sort of relationship and them obviously learning the story and the play that they're putting on called When the Curtain Falls. And then in the other perspective, we hear about Fawn, who is also putting on this play. She's the star of the show, but she's unfortunately having to work with a not a very nice guy who's the producer of the show as well as starring in it. And in that version of the show, at one point, she ends up getting shot with the gun that they use in the show, which at the time was a real gun, and she ends up getting killed, which obviously was a big drama. And lots of different things happen to do with the show and backstage and the theatre that happened because of Fawn, but there's also lots of really dark, very dark parts of this book to do with the nasty guy that she encounters in her version of When the Curtain Falls. That's pretty, yeah, it kept me up sometimes at night. I'm not very good with like scary things, which this isn't scary, but it kept my mind awake and I was like, oh my god, this ghost is evil. And yeah, it was really interesting. I loved this. It's a good story. It's about love and the things that can go wrong in love and in the theatre world and ghosts, like I said. But yeah, it's a really good book. So if you like that kind of thing or you've not read anything of Carrie's before, I would definitely recommend this book because it's really good and I really liked it. And the final book that I read in the month of January, Our Stop by Laura Jane Williams, which again, I've never read anything of hers. I think they said this is her debut novel, and basically it involves two people, again another two-person perspective book, which is we have Rachel and we have Daniel. So Rachel and Daniel are on the same tube line and they have been for quite a while. Daniel has seen Rachel outside of the tube before and decided that he really liked her and he wanted to get to know her, but he didn't know how to do that without her being freaked out by some random person on her commute to work being like, hey, will you go out with me? So he wrote to her in the newspaper that they have on the tube, I guess, for a column called Missed Connections, and he starts to write to her and she's seeing it and thinking, is this about me? So she talks to her friends about him and it turns out he's writing to her, so they write back and forth and it's about their love story and different things that come in the way of their love and all of the instances where they are at the same event or they were at the same place at the same time but they just missed each other, and how their relationship unfolds throughout this time and the different twists and turns that happen and the way that fate brings them together, which yeah, I think it's really nice. It's a nice love story. It's a different way of writing about a love story. You know, you don't really hear about many people finding love on their commute to work on the tube, where most people don't really talk to each other in London, but this was nice and I liked that it had that sort of pen pal, like old love letter kind of aspect to it as well, rather than just being like on a dating app or something. So yeah, that's Our Stop. I really liked this book. It was kind of infuriating at some points because I'd be like, just meet already, but I guess that's part of the love story, is of the, are they gonna meet? Are they finally gonna fall in love? Is this gonna happen for them? But yeah, I really like this book. I will definitely read more of Laura Jane Williams's books in the future because I really liked her style of writing. And yeah, that was the last book that I read in January of 2021, and that's all I have to talk about today. So I guess all I'll have to say for now is thank you very much for watching. If you have any book recommendations for me, please leave them below. I'm always in the lookout for new books. If you liked the video, don't forget to give it a thumbs up. And if you want to subscribe to my channel, that would be nice as well. I'm always on the lookout for new friends. And yeah, I will see you next time in the next video. Goodbye for now.